because Brett and I were just talking about whether or not MAGA would stand with Bull Connor or with Jefferson Davis over an Abe Lincoln. And the answer clearly is yeah. I half expect Bull Connor or Jefferson Davis to trend on Twitter or the Getter or the Gab or whatever the hell they are doing now. This was a powerful speech, but it needs to be followed with powerful action in the powerful United States Senate, where we have senators who don't like the idea of carving out voting rights from an archaic racist rule known as the filibuster, which requires the United States Senate to meet a standard that is met nowhere else in the United States, in any legislature, in any of the 50 states. And that is a supermajority vote by that state legislature in order to get some sort of a piece of legislation passed out of the state senates. Only the feds, only ours, only the one that matters, right? And Manchin doesn't like the idea of losing the ability to be an impediment to everything, nor does Kirsten Sinema. We don't know what the reaction will be from the other senators like John Tester, who's on the fence and undecided, or a Maggie Hassan, or no, Hassan has gone as far as to say she would carve out voting rights from the filibuster. It's Jeanne Shaheen we have to worry about. Jeanne Shaheen, everybody. These are the people you need to call, okay? You need to call them, and you need to tell them that democracy trumps a rule, that our being able to vote and have our votes impartially counted is not subject to a supermajority's whim, okay? And so the number for the United States Senate is 202-224-3121, and then you can ask to speak to Manchin's office or Sinema's office, depending on where you're calling from. Maybe you want to talk to a Jeanne Shaheen's office. Maybe you're interested in reaching out to a John Tester. Maybe you think that it's something you'd like to do today. That would be good. That would be welcome, because it would send the message that you listened to that speech and you responded to it by saying, I don't stand with Bull Connor. I don't stand with Jefferson Davis. I'm more of an Abraham Lincoln Republican.
When Lincoln gets in 1861, he said the central idea of the struggle they were fighting, the Civil War had already started, was whether or not if a minority, and by that he meant a minority who lost an election, did not accept that they had lost an election, and they decide that they are going to break from the Union, as they did, to secede from the Union, then democracy is an absurdity. It can't work. And what are we seeing right now? But the minority that lost the election is claiming it wasn't lost. They are having state legislatures now with the possibility to overturn the will of the people. They're having partisan people counting the votes instead of the nonpartisan volunteers. I think if Lincoln were here now, he would say, if that's true, then democracy is an absurdity. So what do? We go for voting rights. We have to protect it. It's the most important thing. As long as I've lived, it's the fight that I think is the most important fight in my life. When I was involved as a young girl in the March on Washington, when I sat and listened to Lyndon Johnson's joint session of Congress speech where he said, voting is not a partisan issue. It's not a northern issue. It's not a southern issue. This is for to get the Voting Rights Act of 65. It's not even a moral challenge because it's undeniably wrong to deny your fellow Americans the right to vote. That's what's happening right now, and that's the fight we have to fight.
It is. That's Doris Kearns Goodwin, who is a presidential historian. All the presidential historians, Michael Beschloss, and any presidential historian that is worth any of your time is telling you this, is telling you the same damn thing, that democracy has become an absurdity if a supermajority is required to pass voting rights again. Something that was voted on by 16 current members of this current United States Senate over and over and over again to uphold voting rights. Mitch McConnell voted for voting rights. Every one of the 16 current Republican senators who have been around as long as W have voted for voting rights. Voting rights passes typically 98 to nothing. To nothing. It's not a controversial thing, the voting rights. It was in the 60s, and then it wasn't. And every single president of every single stripe has signed into law, reauthorization of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It wasn't until we got this political Supreme Court, this completely dirty Supreme Court that said, money is speech. Money is words. Money is how the rich people or the corporations speak. And they did Citizens United and said, unlimited dark money. You can buy yourself a House member. You can buy yourself a senator. And now you can buy yourself a Supreme Court justice or 3. Okay? And it wasn't until we had this political Supreme Court that said, oh, we don't need the Voting Rights Act anymore. Racism is over. And then you combine that with a flood of dark money. And here we are. And here we are. Now, we all want justice for what we saw on January 6th, which was violence, which was an insurrection, which was a riot, which was subversion or an attempt at subverting the will of the people. We get that. And that will come. That will come, but not before we vote. I just don't think that will come before we vote. Again, I offer you as evidence of how long it takes to build a case that is captured on videotape for the whole world to see how long it took to bring Derek Chauvin to justice. How long it took to get the McMichaels into court and convicted. And those were ordinary people, only mildly connected to their local governments. One was a police officer and the other was an investigator in a district attorney's office. That district attorney is now facing criminal charges, but you don't see the trial for that district attorney yet. So if you think that shooting at the king or getting anyone around a president or a presidential administration is something that could happen in a year, you are wrong. Sadly, you're wrong. I wish that we could actually put into evidence that phone call with Brad Raffensperger and say, jury, was that voter interference or not? It doesn't go like that. It doesn't work like that. Whoever is going to bring this case, whether it's Fulton County, Georgia for the Raffensperger interference, whether it's the federal government for the Raffensperger interference, or whether it's the federal government for the insurrection, or whether, trust me, it's not going to be quick. Yesterday, you have 3 civil suits against the president, the former president of the United States, the loser, 3 civil cases, and a judge, a federal district court judge yesterday is wrestling with the question of whether or not a president of the United States can incite violence and be sued for it. He's literally having to make what he says is not an easy call about whether you can seek money damages against a man who's been sued 50,000 times for his behavior. But because he was president, he has to figure out whether or not, if the president says it, does that make it campaigning? If the president says it, is it protected political speech? These are unique questions because we had such a terrible, terrible human man as our former president. But what we can do is next Monday, watch voting rights be carved out of an archaic racist rule called the filibuster and pass by a simple majority and have the president current sign it into law to protect us all in 2022 and again in 2024. Fingers crossed, everybody. I don't know what our country is right now, but we're about to find out.